Hello everyone, this is Ryan from the ProfitTrailer team, also known as RF Radio on the ProfitTrailer Discord support server as well as elsewhere on the internet. In this video I'm going to be going over the last of the Bollinger Band strategies to be used in ProfitTrailer, and it's a new addition to this version. It is known as BBWIDTH. So what is BBWIDTH? So it is what it sounds like. It is the Bollinger Band width indicator, and we're going to go take a look over here at the Wiki to get a little better understanding of it. So I just go down here to the bottom of my monitoring page, click Wiki, and that takes us to the Wiki welcome page, and we just go down here to the trading submenu and click on buy and sell strategies. So here we are with our familiar looking matrix again, and as we see, BBWIDTH is near the bottom of the matrix here, but you'll also notice this can be used for buying and selling in both pairs and DCA. So this is one of the indicators, or one of the strategies that can be used for everything. There are a lot of them on this chart, as you may have noticed. So if we want to read up about it, we just click on the BBWIDTH here, and it takes us down to the article on the page. So this is giving you a synopsis from an article at stockcharts.com. So this is all from stock charts, but there is a lot more info in the article about this. If you click the link, and it'll take you to it. But this is essentially telling you that Bollinger Band width, it's essentially an indicator derived from Bollinger Bands, just like the low BB and high BB strategy, except this strategy actually uses a specific indicator independent of the low BB and high BB strategies. So it's basically measuring the percent difference between upper band and lower band, right? So as the bandwidth increases, you see that in the market is giving you a measure of higher volatility, and as the bandwidth decreases, it's giving you an indication of lower volatility. The narrowing of the bands during the lower volatility is also known as the squeeze, which is a very handy tool that a lot of traders use to identify when a possible breakout may occur. So this squeeze, this very narrowing of the bands, tends to almost always follow up with some kind of breakout, whether it's to the upside or the downside. Cannot actually be directly measured with just BBWIDTH, so it's best if you're going to use this strategy within ProfitTrailer, it's better to use another strategy to go along with it in order for it to, line up with where you exactly want to buy or sell, depending on which side of it you're using this for. Because remember, BBWIDTH can be used for buying and selling. So running it on its own is not necessarily the best idea, because all it's selling is with the bands. And remember, when you have a significant increase in the price of an asset, or a significant continuous decrease, the bandwidth is going to do the same thing in each case. So if price goes up or down, your bandwidth will increase. So using it by itself isn't always a good idea. So to get a better idea of what's actually happening with it, you should couple it with another strategy. Like if you're selling, using high BB as a coupling strategy with it, that would be a really good selling strategy. Or if you want to even use RSI, that is another possibility for buying and selling, to use RSI with BBWIDTH. Another possibility would be, for buying, use low BB in order to, find your buy-in point, where you're either going for a maximum volatility and a very low Bollinger Band value. That's another possibility. But there's, potentially endless combinations of this that you could be using with other strategies. So the valid values for this is positive decimal values. One thing that I have been hearing about is that the most typical values are between 0 and 30 on this. Okay, so just keep that in mind, that you want to use a relatively low value, but in order to get the buy value or sell value that you're looking for, it's best to look at the individual chart for that asset you're trading. Let's go take a look over here on TradingView to get an idea what I'm talking about. So here we have the Bitcoin chart for Zcash on Binance. So this is the price of Zcash in Bitcoin on this chart. I have here a standard Bollinger Band of 20 period SMA laid out on here. And this is a daily chart. This is not a short-term chart. So I'm looking at each candle. This is a day. Why am I looking at it on the daily? This is to get a measure of an overall trend of what's happening with the band. And you can actually see on this lower indicator here, this bottom one on the screen, this is BB width. This is the Bollinger bandwidth measure right here, and this is the line graph I was telling you about. So at the low points here, near the bottom of the graph, you can see that this is actually lining up. If you put your crosshair over it and look up the dotted line here to the Bollinger band, you'll notice the low point of the graph corresponds with the squeeze in the bands. Okay, and I am using Helmy's bot indicators, low BB and high BB indicator on here. I'm just using this in low BB mode as if I were buying, right? So this is showing between, if you look between the green and the red band, that's the total Bollinger band width right there. And you'll notice that the value for that, if we look at the BB width, is 0.0986. This is a very low value on here. So you'll notice if you wanted to use this as a potential buying point, you could. Maybe not with low BB at this value because I have it set at 10, but you may have it higher than this and potentially using the BB width as your triggering indicator for buy on this. And then you notice it resulted in a break to the upside right after, which you follow further down, you see another squeeze right here. It's not as tight a squeeze as the prior one, but you see that squeeze is definitely happening. It's down near 0.1 on the BB width indicator, and then it breaks it down first, but then swings up. These are some of the patterns you'll see accompanying BB width on the chart or the Bollinger bandwidth. You can see a lot of these times where you can have a squeeze and it breaks upward almost immediately, like this one here. And this isn't as well defined a breakout because the breakout really started to occur right there on the day before this minimal squeeze here. It's like it's increasing slowly there. But in this case, instead it breaks down, but then kind of does a little fake out and swings back. So that's a pretty common one to look for as well in this. So just bear in mind, if you get into a squeeze here, you buy right at that squeeze and all of a sudden starts going down. Don't necessarily think to sell it at a loss going down. Wait to see if it turns around. Because, I mean, look at this. If we're going to look at this measure right here, I take that, if I bought in there and it came back down, I mean, the lowest point it went to on this particular asset is almost a 10% down. It's about 8% there at its low point, but then it swung back up. And that huge, if you didn't sell there, that potential, I mean, you're looking at over 50% gain in it. What is that? 9 days? Something like that? Almost 50% gain. The highest swing up, it topped out around 51% at 7 days. I mean, yeah, that might sound like a long time to hold a trade, but this is just one strategy. If you're a long trader, this could be a very good indicator to use, this Bollinger bandwidth, to help gauge, buy and possibly even sell points for longer trades. We could even take this to look at a shorter time scale if you wanted to do that on 1 hour. And you'll see there's a lot more volatility happening here on the 1 hour chart. But again, you see this little squeeze down here, and this is prior to the breakout that I was showing on the other chart. You see let's zoom in here. I'm trying to get it so you can actually see this a little bit better. Alright, so this is before the breakout. So we see this really tight squeeze happening right here. And actually it really began back at this first squeeze. So we got a little squeeze and a bit of a breakout. And then we get another squeeze and a bit of a breakout. And then another squeeze down. And this is where it's starting to take off, really, at this point. And that's where we had this breakup to this point here. And you'll see it keeps on kind of rippling a little bit there. But at these long, very, very wide points here, you see at the top of the Bollinger bandwidth graph where they top out there. That's where your reversal is starting to occur in your volatility. So it's showing a potential for a reversal in trend. as you go into this squeeze right here, you'll see all of a sudden it starts expanding the Bollinger Band. That's because of the break upward and an extreme measure. And that's the trend reversal right there. So it's a reversal of this, of these lowering volatility. That's a reversal of the volatility trend, where it goes into this break up like this. And then when it gets to the top, you see that where it starts to contract again. Again, this is a reversal in the volatility trend, not necessarily in the price trend. So as your volatility is decreasing, this graph is starting to trend downward. And then it kind of opened back up again. But remember, as it's opening back up, that could be not necessarily because it's suddenly rising in price, but also suddenly falling in price, as you see right here on the candlestick chart with the Bollinger Band. It suddenly started to decrease in the price trend going down, while it was kind of coming up to this secondary peak on the Bollinger Band width. And then we see a gradual lessening of the bandwidth as it moves towards another period of a squeeze, which is kind of there's a little bit of a squeeze right here. It's not as extreme as it was showing on the one-day chart, but this is on hour candles, so hour-long candles, so it's not going to be as pronounced. And there is another squeeze here, followed by a break up. So you see there's many different ways to read these. And also remember, you see this little squeeze here, break to downside. So the squeeze does not necessarily mean break upward. It could also mean break to downside. In these cases, if it was to buy right about here and then follow it down, it's almost a 10% drop. That's what we were seeing on that dip before it swung back upward. So this is a very useful indicator if coupled with others. By itself, as I said, not so useful. I mean, it can signify, all it does is signify a trend change in volatility. But if you couple it with another indicator, like I put RSI on the chart here just to give you an idea of what the relative strength index is doing at the same time that this Bollinger Band width is moving through. So we have, say right here, you have a low point in your RSI. You have a low point here in your Bollinger Band measure right here. So the price is down near the bottom of the Bollinger Band. RSI is near the bottom. And you have your maximum, well, a maximum. It's not the maximum of this chart, but it is near a maximum point for the Bollinger Band width. That could be a potential buy signal right there. And that would actually be a very good position to buy into, because look where it goes right after in that breakup. That break to the upside. So that could be a good, good measure of getting a good buy point. And also another one here. This is near current time here. This is only a few hours ago on this chart here. So we're looking at another dip below the 40 on the RSI. But you see the trend is down in the Bollinger Bandwidth. So you're starting to move into another squeeze right here. Yeah, this could be a potential buy signal down at this point again. You might want to wait and see if it goes lower before doing that. In a lot of these cases, if you're looking to buy that extreme dip following a slide down the Bollinger Band, you may want to set your RSI very, very conservative in order to try and buy lower. But again, just look at the individual charts to determine where you should set your potential buy points. And when you're using BBWIDTH, unless you can find a reasonably close average between the values of multiple charts, of multiple assets, I would not use BBWIDTH in a default setup. Okay, this indicator is best used as a coin pair specific or coin specific indicator, just because of the amount of variance there is between each coin and their Bollinger Bandwidths. Okay, not all coins have the same Bollinger Bandwidth. Some may be close, and they may be close enough for you to have just a fixed whitelist of ones that are close to each other, and just set a value for all of them. That could take a lot of work. I prefer, when using this indicator, is just to mark it as a coin specific individually. So how do we look at this on a chart? or not on chart. How do we look at this in our config? So if we go into pairs, the pairs config, we go and look at the default buy settings. Now currently I have set to low BB. However, if I wanted to, BB width is all we have to put here for our buy strategy. Buy value is not going to be that high. Say I wanted to buy at the squeeze. So I go 0.01 or something like that. Or, yeah, we'll just stick with 0.01 for now. That is a pretty low, very low measurement. Even 0.1. 0.1 would probably be a little better for a lot of them. And then if I'm going to use this, I'm probably going to couple it with RSI. This is my preferred strategy to work with BB width, but you could use whatever you want. And it could just give you different indicators. This is basically one of my setups, and if I wanted to use a more conservative value, I'd probably go 30 to 35 on RSI for this. When I'm using this kind of setup, what I'm looking at here is, actually no, if I'm using a 0.1 on the default buy value, I'm probably going to be somewhere around 50 on the RSI, because in a lot of times with a very low volatility, the price trend may be near the medium part of the band. So this is a little more aggressive on the RSI, but on the BB width, it's pretty darn conservative, at least in my estimations. So if I were to possibly even use a wider bandwidth, say I'm looking at 0.9. A lot of these assets, they don't go above 1 on their value. Now, potentially they could go all the way up to 30 is the limit, or the highest value I've seen anyway for use on these. And then you go, say, RSI of 30. Now this is telling me that I want to buy this at a low point, so when the Bollinger bandwidth is high and the RSI is very low, is usually the price of it is very low as well, relative to prior periods. So this is just one way of looking at it here. You could use other strategies, like if I were to use low BB, I might want to even set this to 0 as my buy value, and my Bollinger bandwidth at a 0.9 or greater. That's again looking at a very wide Bollinger band, but I'm looking for the price to be going really low, and I want it to be at the bottom of the band when I'm using this setup right here. So that's just another example. If using it as a sell strategy, I almost always prefer to couple it with high BB, just because it's one of the more versatile to use here. And you could also accompany it with RSI, but the high BB, if you set this to say 10, you're looking towards the extreme high end of the band, right? And if you say you want your BB width very high there too, you're essentially looking for it to have an extreme break to the upside before it even sells. So that's one of the ways, if you wanted to catch it on a high pump for sell, that could be one way of doing it. If you're in an asset and it pumps hard, there you go. There's a potential for a decent sell point there. Or say your RSI, you want to set it higher than what you would for your buying. 60 to 70 maybe would be one area I would look for using RSI, just to try and get it where it's in a high uptrend before it even considers selling, and it's going to satisfy both the BB width and the RSI in order to sell. So just bear that in mind. There's just a few examples there of how it can be used. And if you want to find other methods of using the BB width, there are many ways of doing it, so that's entirely up to you. Now in DCA, it works exactly the same as it does in pairs, so I'm not going to belabor this too much. If we wanted to do BB width for a buy value, you would set it up very similar, except then you have your buy triggers to contend with here. If I want to do oops, that was a little weird. If I wanted to do a very conservative buying area, maybe buy into the squeeze, or even buy into the extreme expansion of the bands. That way I know I'm buying at a low point when it's dropped drastically here, especially if I set another buy strategy for a low RSI or a low BB, something like that. And your default sell settings, if you're going to use BBWIDTH here, again, you could set it up the same way as you do others and in pairs. So there's not really any difference between how you set it up BBWIDTH in pairs versus DCA. You just have to take into account your buy triggers will have to be satisfied before your strategy will actually buy. I do have a couple of resources for learning more about Bollinger Bands. If you take a look over at Investopedia.com and do a search for Bollinger Band width, it has a very, very good listing of articles there. One of them is learning to use the squeeze. If you look at that article, it gives you a good idea of how the squeeze is actually used for gauging whether or not a breakout is coming in the near term, or even learning how to use that squeeze with other indicators to determine whether it's going to break to upside or downside. It's a very good article for that. But here on John Bollinger's own website called BollingerBands.com, there's this little rules chart that John Bollinger came up with just to kind of keep people in the frame of mind of how to use these, how to use Bollinger Bands in general, not just the width. So if you come over to BollingerBands.com, it's under this Bollinger Bands menu at the top. You click the Bollinger Bands rules. It gives a good overview of how the bands are intended to work and what you can see with them and what you can't see with them. That's really what this is all about right here, and it gives a good overview of what the bands were really meant to be. So that's another really good resource for looking at Bollinger Bands in general. So now that is all I have for this. If you like what you see on this video, go ahead and hit that like button down below. Please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the subscribe button. And if you want to get alerts on when we post new videos and content, go ahead and hit the bell icon right next to the subscribe button. As always, stay safe, happy trading, and we will see you on the next video. If you need any help with your ProfitTrailer client, please consult the wiki at wiki.profittrailer.com. And if you still have more questions, don't hesitate to join us over on the Discord support server following the link on your screen.